Alright guys, thanks so much for joining us today. This is the Spoiled Onions Film Review Podcast, and I am hyped. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm all in on this one.
Oh, man. I can't wait. I'm so... Oh, my emotions. Oh, my emotions.
That's my co-host Brandon right there.
Yeah, Brandon here.
Yeah, so our movie today is Baby Driver.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just like shaking saying it. I'm serious. Literally, when I first watched this film, I watched it, and then the next day I was like, I have to watch this again.
Really?
Like, and I've never done that. Like, people are like, oh, well, I do that all the time. Okay, great. But for me, I get so bored the second time around, it's impossible. But this movie, man, the second time around was just as good.
Man.
This time even.
I had cousins and an aunt who went to go see it. I remember when the trailers were out, I was like, all right, looks a little interesting, maybe funny or something like that. And they said they loved it. It was crazy, crazy good. I was just like, maybe one day. And I hear people left and right talk about it here and there. And I just saw it for the first time the other day. How many times have you seen this movie?
Twice. Well, 3 times, I guess, including this time. So yeah.
I see. Well,
I'm slightly obsessed.
I mean,
twice back to back, and then a third time.
I'm still having to cope because there was so many emotions with this movie.
Listen, dude, the first time I saw it, I was so emotionally distraught.
Yeah.
That's why I had to watch it again. I had to cope. Yeah. It was like I need closure, and it didn't help.
You know, okay, I'm glad you say that because I thought I was gonna be the only one on here going, I was like 15 minutes into it, and I was jamming out. Then Joseph calls me, and I'm telling him I'm watching it, and I'm like, I'm having a great time, yeah! Literally every minute after that, I had the biggest anxiety, because this movie knows how to mess with your heart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so let's, well, actually, let's cue the trailer right here.
Yeah, boom!
So you just starting your day, or did you just get off?
They call, I go, you know.
So what is it you do?
I'm a driver.
Oh, like a chauffeur. Anyone I'd know?
I hope not.
What is your name?
Baby.
Wow, those were some pretty good drifts, weren't they, Joseph? Those were some
all
pretty
the audience
good
heard
moves.
And then music.
I wonder what that intro. It probably was something like, "Is he slow?" Something like that.
Oh gosh.
Nobody has any context.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're hoping you've seen this movie, so because you should. I mean, this is. Let me preface this discussion by saying there are very few movies I've seen that appeal to almost every type of audience. I think this movie is one of them.
Yeah.
I think, Star Wars is a good example. There are very few people, I think, that dislike, and there are people that dislike Star Wars. You can't please everyone. But it appeals to so many different sensibilities and tastes. I think the Mummy from the 99, right?
Sure.
It's another good example.
Yeah.
But to bring it back around, I think Baby Driver does that very well. I mean, you've got the romance, you've got the music, that's a central part. You've got the action, you just got everything, man, packed in there, and it's
funny because it's not necessarily an adventure film, like as if let's go to a destination and do this thing in an adventure or something like that, like The Mummy or Star Wars. This has a more unique premise. You get those heist kind of films sometimes, but this isn't really a heist film either. It's
so unique. It's really unique.
Yeah.
So well, let's talk a little bit about the production and what happened there, and then we'll get into the plot. But so Edgar Wright is the director. I was not familiar with Edgar Wright before watching this film. He's done this film. Before that he did Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and then he did he did that one too. And then he did what is affectionately called the Cornetto trilogy, which is what is it called? Shaun of the Dead was the first one in that one. and then they did 2 more at World's End and Hot Fuzz, I think it was.
Oh.
But yeah, he's a British director, and he has been, pioneering a certain aesthetic in his films, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, he was hired to do Ant-Man, surprisingly enough.
Really?
Yeah, that was going to be his next film. And there was, long story short, there was creative differences, and he left the project. And then he's like, you know what, I'm going to make this film, Baby Driver, because it's something he had always, wanted to make. And if you watch the commentaries, he talks about how he had this idea for, the first 5 minutes of the film is Baby driving away to the song Bell Bottoms.
Yeah.
And when Edgar Wright first heard that song, he's like, oh, this is a great chase scene song. And so the entire movie was based on his premise of, I want to use this song to power a chase scene, which is really cool.
Hey, man, that was really good. I loved that scene. I mean, before everything turned into an emotional crisis, I was just like, I'm into this. Yeah, I'm jamming out. Let's go.
Oh. Man. It is probably one of the best opening sequences I've ever seen. Like, I don't... It's just so well done. Like, your first 5 minutes of your film needs to lay out the rest of the film, give the tone, and hook the audience. And it's just so perfect. It's comparable to A New Hope, where, Darth Vader's like, waltzes in, it's like, yo, what up? I'm here. or like the Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's another great one. Like, I think this is just as good as those.
It hooked me from the very start. Are we wanting to get into the plot, or did we want to talk a little bit more about the production?
Yeah, no. Let's get into the plot a little bit. Yeah, let me lay like a bare bones outline, and then we can dig in a little bit. So basically, the story is about Baby, who is, from what we understand, an orphan. He's living with his adopted father. And the beginning of the movie sets this idea of him as the getaway driver for a band of criminals. However, we are delighted, as is Baby, because after that chase sequence, the mastermind known as Doc says, you're free. You're good to go. You paid your debt. And he walks away. But he's not free. And the rest of the film is kind of this struggle for him. He wants to escape this life of crime, but as most people would know, once you're hanging around with those type of people, it's hard to climb out.
Right.
And then there's nuances to it, right? He meets Deborah at the diner and falls in love with her, which is an interesting aspect to the plot, because now he has something to lose, right? Now the stakes raise at that point. And then they introduce Jamie Foxx's character, who is like this crazy, like, you don't know what he's gonna do, criminal type of dude.
Yeah.
Who then is with Baby Driver, or with Baby on all the driving assignments, and the tension builds till you get to the climax, which is basically another job. But Baby's like, I'm done. So he botches the job. He ends up killing Jamie Foxx's character, who is Bats. And then there's this massive chase scene. He goes back to try to get his girl Deborah and run away. John Hamm's character, who is another bank robber, forgot his name, Buddy, ends up coming after him because Darling, his wife, got shot in that final robbery because of Baby's messing it all up. So then at the end they escape, Buddy dies, and they are driving away, but the police catch him. And as far as we can tell, the ending of the movie is Baby going to prison for a very, very long time. So that is the plot.
Well, it's not actually a very long time, if depending on your interpretation.
Sure. 20 years or something like that? I don't remember exactly.
5 years.
Was it 5 years?
They sentenced him to 25 years in prison. 5 years. I'm about to make your day, Joseph. 25 years to prison. 5 years. That is mandatory before what do they call it? It's where they have to do an inspection to
probation?
See if you're qualified for. I believe that is parole. I thought it was what it was called, but I think it was probation or something like that. That so if you have good behavior for 5 years, then you may submit an application to be on what's the word?
Free?
Parole? Not free. No, you have to be. It's like house arrest. They have officers, I think, that you always have to get in contact with on a weekly basis. You're always telling them where you live. You can only do certain things,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
And you can serve out the rest of your sentence in your house, essentially, and be a part of a society, but being overlooked by the police and all that within foreseeable future. Which isn't that bad. Which is how I interpreted that last scene. She's writing that letter.
Yes.
Well, hold on. She literally says she's writing the letter like, I can't wait, blah, blah, blah. Right? And he's all like, yeah, it'll be no time. And then it's implied that the 5 years pass and he does his time. And then he comes on out and he's free. And there's a rainbow in the background. And just like the, what is it, Dolly Parton song said, you can't get a rainbow without a little rain. Thank you.
Listen, I would love to believe that. But...
Holy cow, it's what happened. It's what they said.
Well, the ending is a bit ambiguous to begin with.
Sure.
And it reminds me of this movie, Legends of the Fall. I don't know if you've seen it. But basically, it's the same scenario. I think the dude goes out. It's like Brad Pitt or something. He goes to war. And the woman's like, I'll wait for you forever. And then he comes back from war, and she's like married.
Oh,
So,
no.
I'm feeling, even if it's 5 years, that's kind of a long time.
Well, look,
it's
sometime. That's why I'm sad, is that he had to go to jail at all.
Yeah.
But 5 years, let's say he's like 21, 22 or something like that. Let's just say. He's only going to be 27. That's pretty good, considering all the things that he could have been in jail for, right? And I do believe that's what the movie is implying, is that I don't know. Let me put it like this. I do believe that, after the 5 years that he's going to be good to go, because he's clearly minding his own business, being flat and all that in prison so that he doesn't get himself messed up and be in a position where he has to be there for 25 years. That last scene is it's too much like a dream for me to say that it's absolutely real. Like, it could be just his imagination of the future once he, does his time, which is the 5 years. Or maybe it's just so beautiful that that is how they let him out, going out the front doors or something like that. That's my interpretation, because it makes me happy.
That's fair. Well, I think Edgar Wright purposely designed the film to where cynics like me can believe that it wasn't a happy ending and that life, it just sucks sometimes.
No.
And people like you can rest in the fact that there was a beautiful, happy ending. I mean, like you said,
people
it's
like me
dreamlike.
do like happiness. I don't know about you.
Well, and it's interesting because that scene plays out earlier in the film, right? It's almost a duplicate of, I don't remember when that scene first plays out, but it's, what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Where he comes out and she's at the car and he's excited. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the first time that happens, they're like in normal clothing and it's like a normal car. But at the end, they're dressed like 60s style and it's like a 60s car.
Right.
So it's even more dreamlike.
Yeah, it's like a fantasy.
It implies more that, he's kind of stuck. But I don't know.
I do think it is in the end a dream, like it's like a dreamlike sequence, but that's not to say that isn't the expected future for him, right? It's like I really do, because they said 5 years, and she did write him that letter. Though it could be the case that 5 years passed and she moved on. She's just like, look, you're all washed up, or something crazy. But I don't believe it. I won't believe it. She waited, and she wore that outfit, and it was a 60s outfit, and they went and rode into the rainbow.
With the parole officer right behind them.
That's right. Like, well, tell us where you're going. We're going to be with you for the next 20 years, buddy. Or should I say baby?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, let's talk about the deeper plot points then, right? Because it is when, after the first opening sequence, I was all jammed and thinking, like, I didn't see anybody get killed. I saw some crashes and been like, oh, that's too bad, but, baby ain't doing anything too bad. They just stole some money. I know they went in there with shotguns and closed the door. I understand that's implied, but we didn't see it, so it's not so bad, you know? Oh, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Deadpool style. It's scary, and it's kind of wrong, but, you know, I'm just going to jam out with this music as we do some sick drifts. And I was going with it. He gets paid, but he never uses the money that he gets. That's the crazier part. I don't know if he only uses a little bit of it or what, because he's able to go and make pizza runs and get a lot of money that way too. But he puts all that money in under a wooden board by his adopted father and or foster father, and sure. He uses all of it to pay for that man's retirement at the end of the movie. So, you know, he's not doing it for the money. He's not doing it for any of that. It's because this other guy's so powerful that he obviously knows the threatening. Like, I could just kill you and no one would even know. Nobody would ever care. I'm rich. I'm a multi-millionaire. You know what I can do to you, but I know what you've got. So I'll let you live and give you an opportunity here and there, and I'll get you some money too. So when he finally got out of it, knowing how much a jerk these other robbers were to him, right? And he's just minding his own business. Man, I'm so anxious because I'm just like, these guys are scary. They are genuinely scary. I don't get that too many times in films. You know, let me put it like this. Point. These guys, you know, Bats and Buddy and all that, and the Punisher, they gave me levels of anxiety because of how much I cared for Baby and knowing their unpredictable nature, that I was more genuinely fearful for their actions than Thanos and Marvel's Avengers. And I think that comes down to the realism and the acting and how they really can pull off those bad personas, thinking like, man, I'm Baby right now. What do I do? What do I do? These guys are crazy. These guys are crazy in the head. What am I going to do? They're too unpredictable. So when he's trapped and you think he just got out of it, you get that guy coming back and saying, like, I'll give you the choice. And he's like, I don't want to. Yeah, it's like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Just have happily ever after. That was the movie. Happily ever after. He's like, you know what I can do to you, right? And he's threatening him, but it's just like, no, it's not fair. It's not fair. He did his time. It's not fair. So he has to follow through because he's worried about his and her life. And, you know, so he's thinking of just running away, and hopefully he can outrun them to the point for where it's like, he won't bother with me. I'm just going to get out of here. But then he gets caught in that one last scheme, and this Bats guy, what's the actor's name? Fox again? What is it? Jamie Foxx. Man, this guy's crazy. I'm just, oh
gosh.
The scene when they were at the arms dealers and all that. Me. Man, and Buddy at the very end, because I'm just like, Or when he wanted to kill the waitress, I'm just like, dude, you really are crazy. You are crazy. He said it earlier. It's like, I'm the only one with the mental problems, kind of thing. It's like, The whole movie, just really, from that point when he had to get stuck in it again, tense, my heart, tense. When he had the videotapes going, I'm like, please believe him. He's not doing those things. I didn't even think of that. Man. Until the end. I don't know why he didn't just, well, I think I know why. But the one character, what's the guy who leads all the acts? Doc, I guess is his name. Played by Kevin Spacey. I thought he's so sinister that it's like, look, if I out myself to the police, he showed earlier that he has some of the police. So it's like, you know, he'll get away with it. He'll kill me. So I can't just surrender right now after killing Bats and just give the money to the cops. I got to just get out of here. I just got to get out of here. But I guess I didn't know why he was still taking the money until he ended up meeting up with Doc. Like, hey, here's your money stuff. Please help me just get out of this. Right? Because this is really bad. But here's your money. I followed through on my side, but please help me get out of this. And he's all like, I can't help you, kid. It's over. And I believed him. And then the girl comes out, and this is basically one of my only critiques, is that I didn't know if it was realistic.
Yeah.
Because throughout this whole thing, he was willing to kill her earlier on, and just because she got involved, he's like, I know what it is like to be in love at one time. It's just like, look, are you such that may show his own insanity, though, as a person, that he is so emotionally desensitized to things that only in spurts can he regain his humanity. And to commit these kind of acts, these people, they really are messed up in the head, right? In real life and all that, they are messed up in the head. That's not because they're stupid. Crazy doesn't always manifest itself as la, 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 right, and going like waving your arms around. There's different types of crazy. And the Kevin Spacey character, I think his craziness is that he can be in one moment desensitized emotionally to, the pain of others, and then in another moment have empathy. It didn't really seem realistic to me, to the point for where he basically gave up his own life to save baby and his girlfriend. And it's just like, dude, you were about to kill this kid because he wasn't driving for you. How are you going to be empathetic now when you already understood the implications of what you were willing to do to this guy? I don't know, man. That was the only thing that I think I can really critique, is how weird that situation was. Because if he was truly capable of that much empathy, then I would have done a lot of other things. I would have just not been a part of it and believed that he wouldn't hurt me or my girlfriend or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. That's the only critique I think I could think of in the film, is how it's like, I wonder why he would help him just in that moment when he was just as willing to hurt her before. But yeah, Buddy's character, keep on.
Allow me to cut in here.
Yeah.
Couple things. I think you mentioned the acting and how it made you scared.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. I've seen, Jamie Foxx. Well, let's put this way. I saw Jamie Foxx as Electro, and I was not scared at all.
Right.
In fact, it was a little comical.
Yeah.
But my goodness.
Well, you're gonna get more of that, by the way. But anyways, continue.
Yeah, apparently. Well, we'll see. But yeah, I thought. Well, we'll probably get into acting, or we can even divulge into it here. But I thought they did such a good job making me scared, because I just didn't know what was going to happen next. That whole diner sequence, I was like, is there going to be a shootout here?
Yeah.
And then when he doesn't shoot anything, I'm just like, oh my goodness. Fell backwards in exhaustion.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I was so happy when he shot him. I was so happy.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, I'm thinking, you're talking about the one with Jamie Foxx first.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. There's a lot of tension in this movie. And, I'd even offer, which I'm sure we're going to get into the soundtrack at some point, but I think all of the emotions in this movie, and the fact that it is such an emotionally driven movie, is from the music. Because music has that way of tapping into your emotional core, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I think, we'll probably divulge more into that. But right. And then the second thing, you talked a little bit about Baby's arc and how he's trying to get out, but he can't get out. And I think it's interesting to look at his character in this plot. And he is the protagonist, he is the hero, but he's just this hero who's struggling. Like you read stories and there's a hero who fails and then bad things happen, but this guy is just struggling from the beginning, and it's not necessarily his fault.
Right.
I think the plot mentions that the reason he got involved with Doc was because when he was a kid, literally when he was like 12, he was racing on the highway and losing cops and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And so Doc finds him and is like, okay, you're gonna race for me now. Yeah. Which is interesting, because it kind of gives this idea of the mistakes you make as a kid can sometimes haunt you for the rest of your life, which is somewhat very applicable.
Yeah.
And then, it goes on to expound upon the idea that you can't run away from this problem, He thought he could just walk away from it, but he can't. It's going to keep coming, and he's going to have to deal with it. And finishing the movie, you kind of take a step back and reflect, and you see that he could have just gone at the police. Well, you said he bought the police, sure, but the amount of police drivers chasing them in this movie makes me believe that there's a good amount of police officers that weren't bought.
Well, I'm not saying there was a lot. You could say there's only 10, but if he has some insiders, then it's just enough to be able to say, "Whoops, he tried to hit me. I had to defend myself." Something stupid.
I mean, I still think, and it's a critique. It's a critique that's applicable to the modern world, because you always see these crime hotlines where they're like, anonymous tips. And people are scared when they know about these situations, because it is actually a scary situation to be in.
Yeah.
But it's just Baby is a flawed character in this narrative, and he I think it's awesome because he's what, like a 20-year-old in this movie, and he makes typical 20-year-old mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Why does he have to run away from the police? I mean, sure, like you mentioned, some of them may have been bought, but I mean, what's the better bet? To get shot running away?
Yeah.
Or to, say, hey, look, I was forced into this against my will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he just keeps digging the ditch deeper when he could have perhaps climbed out. And it's just it's the hubris of the character. It's the the fatal flaw. They just don't they don't always get to win, which is awesome.
I agree. It probably is a flaw of his. He doesn't have a sophisticated way of getting out of it, and he's just acting in the moment, right? Even going as far as killing Jamie Foxx, that was something decided in the moment.
Unexpected. Dude, I was like, what the heck?
Yeah, I was worried they'd kill him or something because he did that. But they just all decided to run away, and I'm like, okay, good.
That was. There's so many unexpected things in this movie. I was just like, what in the world? No. That is not what I anticipated. So.
Man. I was hoping that Buddy would kill Jamie Foxx or something because of what he was doing. Man.
Yeah. Well, it's sad too because even I think Buddy's character is, apart from Baby's, one of the most deep ones.
Yeah.
Because you see how he's kind of he's kind of a good guy / bad guy. He's kind of like that anti-hero type of dude. Like, he's doing this, but he's also conscious of the dangers, and he's kind of Baby's friend in the beginning, and then he turns into his enemy. Which you mentioned your critique about the plot, and I totally agree. I think if anything, this movie struggles with narrative inconsistencies, or like forcing the audience to make conclusions that seem a little far-fetched, right? So like you talk that whole thing about Doc, I do agree. I think it's a little, I just think it's we see him threatening him, and then like an hour later he's like, oh, I'm gonna risk my life and get hit and all to save you, and it just doesn't make sense. But I think even going into Buddy's narrative, it's the same. Like even Darling, like there's a massive shootout, and what does she do? She turns around with no cover and is just like Ramboing it up in there. And I'm like,
I don't know.
What? And then Buddy's cool. Like, oh, now instead of escaping, I'm just gonna go try to kill Baby for no reason. Well, I guess he thinks it's Baby's fault. And then how did they even meet in that parking lot? Like, it's freaking Atlanta.
It was a coincidence. It was actually a coincidence. Yeah.
Oh,
he hit their truck, and they were like, "You got to be kidding me."
I know. That's what I felt as an audience member. Like, what?
Well,
and then even like he steals a cop car to chase him down. I'm like, you're stealing the most obvious thing.
That's actually a good point. Actually, I didn't even think about that.
It's so weird. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it makes fine sense that he'd be going after Buddy after his wife dies, because he's not in the right mind.
I guess so.
And he wants vengeance. There's just other things here and there, though, that if I was, I was thinking like something's gonna happen, and then that's not. Like the cop runs in, he's just like, bathroom key. I'm just like, look,
that's fair.
Like, part of me, if I was Baby, think about this. Nobody knows, right, who you are. They don't have your profile figured out or something like that. There are multiple. Why didn't Baby shoot twice when Buddy was on the ground? I would have been like, boom, 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 die, pig, boom, boom, right? Make sure, not just get the shoulder and him say, nothing can stop me, baby, as I'm running away. No, you're dead. And I would have waited for the cop to come out, for her to tell him that this man, he had a gun, look, right? And then take a look at it and go, oh, and while they're looking over it, Baby, run away. It's just like, hey, wait, we didn't get that guy's name or anything with her. Run away. Boom! Movie solved. The end. Good night. No jail.
Yeah.
Shoot. Yeah. How did this happen? Come on. Boom, boom, boom. That's what you should have done. If you're going to shoot him, you might as well just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. I think there's some inconsistencies, and it was written by Edgar Wright, so.
Also, when the girlfriend was just standing there in order to create the diversion of him going like, oh, there she is. I'm pulling out my gun now for Baby to hit him with the car. I'm like, that doesn't seem to make sense. You're talking about a seconds off, and she gets shot in the chest. What? I don't think so. What? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's an action movie. We want to get them good shots.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of this movie is that very few people are walking out of a viewing saying these things, right?
Right.
Most people are like, oh my gosh, the music was awesome, and it was just, and
Yeah.
And I think, not to say that you should have a bad narrative at all, but I think if you can so distract your viewers with just awesome filmmaking, like, clearly Edgar Wright is, like, an insanely good filmmaker. Just insanely good. So, I mean, it's great. He might need to work on his storytelling a little bit. But it's really cool that this movie is so good in other places that it can totally distract you from that. So.
Yeah, and I'm not saying these things are even the story, right? I understand these are just little parts of things here and there, but yeah, there's just so many nice things.
A little tangent here, but that scene in the diner, when the waitress walks out and it's the shot of Buddy, and then all of a sudden he looks at Baby, the camera moves, and he's standing there with the gun. That like threw me for a loop. I was like, oh my goodness.
You're talking about the diner when he had the gun in...
Yeah, well, because he was sitting next to him, and you have that shot of him and Buddy looking at each other.
Right.
Then the waitress walks in, shot of waitress.
Yeah.
Goes back to just Buddy, saying, we're doing just fine.
Yeah.
And then he looks at Baby, the camera moves with his head, and then he's standing there with the gun.
Yeah.
And it's just like, ah.
I was relieved.
Oh.
I was like,
okay.
I was like,
That's fair.
But I would have went, like I said, boom, 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 right in the face too, not in the boom. Clean it up. I'm sorry. I'm just like, this isn't. That was just stupid. I don't know why. Look, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's what you got to do. Come on.
Well, there's something to be said for adrenaline, because you don't think right when you're in the moment of like that. And but that's a cop out. Yeah, it could have been written better. So, but yeah, while we're on the subject of cameras and moving, why don't we talk a little bit about the cinematography?
Sure.
I thought it was excellent. Like I really like Edgar Wright is kind of known for his creative transitions, and I think it's most evident in the scene where so in the middle of the movie there's another chase sequence, right?
Right.
And then the fight ends. We have another closing where Doc gives him the money, but he's like, "Oh, I got one more thing to do." And what had happened is one of the bank robbers who kept messing up, they actually just killed him and stuffed him in a car.
Well, actually, I think I know why.
Go ahead.
I think I know why they did that. Because at first, when he made one certain mistake, I already knew the implication, and that's when he left behind the shotgun. I was just like, oh no. No, you have no idea what you just did. That is one of the easiest ways for the cops to trace down those who are involved, or at least the person involved, because all guns have a license number and all that on them, and all over it, that you track back to the dealers and whatnot. And when you have a dealer, you cannot buy or sell without having a person, and that automatically places someone, it doesn't matter who, involved in this whole thing, to trace it. So by leaving behind a gun, you've just made a whole lot of problems for that one big guy. It's just like, oh great. Right?
Yeah.
It's really bad if you do something like that. Not that I should know. I'm just saying, I remember in the Inspector video games, detective video games and all that, everything down to bullets. Everything down to bullets. It makes it so much easier to figure out and trace back who did what. So
That's awesome.
yeah, that's
Well, no, yeah, and totally, I get that, but basically, Baby has to dispose of the body, and so it's a shot. It's a kind of like a pan shot of Baby standing in front of the car, or a wide shot, I should say.
Yeah.
And then the scene changes to where he's in a junkyard, but he doesn't, like his clothes. He doesn't move, and the car doesn't move, but it's like a scene change, and it's like so well done. It's just really well done. There's not much else to say on my part.
Oh man, it was such a weird feeling too, though, because you're hearing the music play out, and you're seeing it, and you only see like for a second, like some red in there, so you're just like, oh man, that's brutal, that's messed up. Yeah, and there's a lot of Let's talk about, like, they do it a few times. What do they call it? Extended shots? I don't know what they call it. For where you have one continuous shot as they move across the set, and they sometimes you can manipulate it to make it look like it's all one shot. But like at the beginning when he's getting the coffee, and in that scene also when he's leaving and throwing away the phone. And they're also doing it, either they're editing it with some software, but they're also doing it with a lot of frames too, for where you can do it all in slow motion. So yeah, it's very interesting. They plan that out.
Yeah. So for the audience, if you shoot in if you shoot with more frames per second, so movie standards is 24 frames per second. If you shoot in a higher frame rate, you can drop frames without losing that fluidity, and then it'll slow down the scene a bit. So you can keep it at 24 frames, but it's a little slower. But yeah, let's talk about that. It's interesting to me, and movies have really lost this. But the idea of I don't even know what you call it, like a beginning credit scene where the credits are a part of the film, and I don't even know if that was ever prevalent during a certain time period. But there are certain movies scattered where that is used. And I've always found it to be very enjoyable. Yeah. You know?
That took a lot of effort. Wasn't there, like, the names of certain cast members and all that production stuff that were on the walls and all that?
No. So what it actually was the song that was playing, which is Harlem Shuffle. Yeah. There was graffiti on the walls mimicking the lyrics of the song. Yeah. So, like, when it's like, it goes like, whoa, 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 at one point, that's like graffitied on the wall.
Right. Okay. Which is... I thought I remember seeing something like that. Intense.
Yeah, it's really cool when you first catch that. It's like, you would think that's almost jarring. You would think it would separate you from the film, because you're like, oh, well, the song lyrics are in the... But it just makes it cooler.
It makes it funky, man. This boy's funky.
Yeah.
He's funky. And by the way, I also thought when he got those 4 coffees, I thought he got them for himself. Because he's just he just has all that energy he needs for driving. I thought that's what was happening.
That's fair. But yeah, I think filmmakers should bring that back. I really like that that pause, you know, because we had the action, and then it paused, and then we had this kind of relaxed. Literally, he's just dancing to the music, and then credits are showing. And
right.
I thought it was really well done.
Hey, it was great. Hey, this movie was good. And you're right, even just for the shots and the aesthetic of it all, man, it's so fun. It's so cool. And I wish it makes you almost reminiscent for where, you know, prior decades had very specific styles. And our generation, it does have a style, even though people can't tell. Kind of like with accents, you don't know you have an accent if you're native to the place that you have an accent. But basically, we're kind of in the hip-hop area for anybody concerned. Either you're dressed in normal attire, as in jeans, t-shirt, okay, or you're doing something hip-hop fashioned, right? I know there's a lot of diversity in there because of, you know, we live in a multicultural society, and back in the day, we weren't as multicultural as we are now. But that's the point, is that it actually causes us to be less, divergent from generation to generation, because of multiculturalism causes people to be more, you can't find certain trends because everybody's doing their own thing. While as in 80s and 70s and 60s, so many people are trying to do what looks cool and be a part of the fad. And then this movie, I don't know where I would pinpoint it. Would you say 70s, 60s, 70s? Even though it takes place in modern time.
Like the visual style or the clothing, or?
Well, think about it, because I do think it's intentional on the director's part. You know, he's wearing a jacket. I don't know what you would call it. It's not necessarily a varsity jacket, but I think it gives off that feel. Very simple colors. It actually kind of looks like the Han Solo looking jacket, but it's not. It's a varsity looking jacket with a waitress from what is a stylized older diner wearing a stylized older waitress outfit, and people wearing more colorful clothing here and there, and those who are doing the business aspects are wearing the suits and whatnot. If you look over that opening scene again, you'd even see I think it also is because, you know, these cities, so many of the buildings and so many of the shops are actually from the 80s and 70s, and they've just been refurbished over time, that it'll give off that natural look as if it's like, oh, it's kind of like 70s, even though it's not.
Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of, I'll say this, Rebel Without a Cause.
Oh, okay.
Kind of reminded me with that kind of feel. At least with Baby. Not because of the character, but with the look of it all.
Well, I think, yeah, and I mean, if you actually read the commentaries, they paid a lot of attention to the clothing. Like, a lot. And I don't know that he was trying to shoot for a specific era as much as he was just trying to create this fantasy barrier, right? Like, he didn't want to mimic what everyone sees today, but he didn't want to mimic something that's necessarily familiar, right? So it gives us that illusion of 60s and 70s, but it's not quite there, and it separates it into an entirely different world where this story exists, and I think that's... But they also talked about colors and how they use the colors of the clothing to channel the character's own vibe, if you will. You know, Bats is like almost always wearing red, which is, you know, for obvious reasons.
I see.
I think Darling was like pink was her color. Buddy was blue. Baby was supposed to be like drab colors, and then I think Deborah was just like black and white, you know, because she was supposed to be like the honest.
Except for when she's not at work. When she's not at work, she's wearing very colorful things, like a yellow dress with the blue denim jacket. And even in the opening sequence, right? I'm looking at a photo right now of it, and she's walking past for the first time, and she's singing her little song, and it's similar to him. You know, it's so... this is what movies are about, man. I hope I can get this good, for where you can rely upon visuals without having to say things. You can just show it, and it'll already be implied, and that's much more relatable to an individual than just saying, "Oh, she's beautiful. Oh, I care about her." He turns around in the coffee shop, which is bland and boring and brown, and outside it's colorful, and she's walking past, listening to her music, all like, "Baby," right, kind of thing. And on the wall, there's graffiti of a giant, like, ocean wave with a heart shooting out as she walks past in the slow motion. And then it turns back, and he's back into reality. He's just like, "Ooh, you didn't need to tell me anything." And I already knew that. Of course he's interested in her. Of course he looks at her and thinks, "Wow," without him having to even say it. So cool.
Yeah. Well, and that's what filmmaking really is about. I mean, that's why they do the storyboards, because you want to have something. You basically want to have your movie to the point where if you take all the sound out, you can still understand what's going on, you know, and enjoy it. The sound is just enhancing the experience. But yeah, like too many people like Mortal Engines rely on dialogue for exposition.
No.
But anyway, not to get sidetracked.
Right. No.
Another thing I wanted to point out is he said so the colors were supposed to mimic personalities, but he also talks about how most gangster films, everyone's wearing black, and it's really hard to get a read on them in a big fight scene or a shootout like the one that happens in the movie.
Yeah. So
Edgar Wright specifically wanted to avoid that, to where as soon as you see a color, you associate it with a character, and it just helps you. It helps the storytelling so much more, which is awesome. I think it's a really cool detail.
Yeah, it's a treat. I can't wait to watch this movie again with other friends.
Yeah, we gotta do that. That's great.
Oh, I can't
but anyway, yeah. So let's talk about the music.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. You know, I've always wanted to see a movie that used music well.
Yeah.
And I think this is the only one I've seen that does that. When I saw Guardians of the Galaxy,
I was about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I was going to be about Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think it does it okay.
Right.
I don't think it does it well.
Right.
And you say, well, what's the difference? And it's because literally the way they shoot this movie, action is happening to the beat of the music. So that the music becomes so sewn together with what's happening in the movie that your emotional response to the music is what is attached to the action as well.
Right.
That's one. And second of all, Edgar Wright is not afraid of playing the entire song, which is cool, because there's a lot of people who like to listen to a minute of a song and then move to the next, but I've always liked listening to the entire thing because it's the full experience.
Right.
And that's my biggest issue with Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, you just get like a 20-second snippet of the song during one little scene, and then it moves on to the next scene where there's no music. So
yeah, Yeah,
The
it
soundtrack
seems-
may be great, but you're not experiencing it the same way you are in this film.
Yeah, I appreciate what Guardians of the Galaxy wants to try to do. I think Baby Driver is what it should be when it comes to soundtracks. But yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, it seems like they throw it in there because they want you to make you think that the character's funky. And I say funky. I don't know if I'm using it the same way society uses the word funky. What I mean is he's clearly from like, I guess you could say the 80s or 70s in which he was abducted. I'm not sure. And he's holding on to the older Earth music, and he's attached to it, and it gives that uplifting family, like, yeah, we got this, right? Rather than it being too serious and taking the movie and the characters themselves too seriously while they're going on their adventures, so that it feels like a funky adventure. With this movie, like you said, they go as far as to timing out actions with that of the music. Every bullet's that shot, right? And moving things in response to the soundtrack, almost like it was a music video. But I'd say even better, because this had to, considering they had to acknowledge what the songs were going to be before they were planning out the storyboards of how these shots were going to take place. I understand where there can be some room for editing, like with the bullet shots and whatnot. But there's only so many shots that you can utilize that just so happen to match with the music, that it's like, no, this was pretty intentional, and they must have had ideas for this. Maybe they used some animations beforehand to know how they set it all out. I remember watching the behind the scenes for the things like the Star Wars prequels, for where before they even begin any CGI or any sort of things with the green screen and the actors, they have to plot out the entire sequence visually, even if it's just simple motions, simple animation motions, so that they know what they're looking for when they get on set to actually start rolling the cameras. I say rolling, but recording.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Maybe they use film. I don't know.
Well, no. If you look into it, Edgar Wright actually wrote the script with all the songs in the script.
I see.
So I'm sure when they did previs, they incorporate that as well, which is funny because he's like, oh man, they tell you not to do that. Because then when you show when you go to get the licensing, the people are like, oh, well, this song is really important, so I'm going to charge you a lot more to use it.
Gee.
But yeah, no, he totally knew what songs he wanted before anything. He just had a script, and he was like, this is what the songs we're going to use. And I don't think it changed at all.
Strategically speaking, I'd imagine that he'd even get the licensing for those songs before he starts shooting anything. I could imagine the level of security there. That way they don't have that type of situation playing out so bad.
I think that's just the way you're supposed to do it. You get the licensing and then you're like, okay. Or maybe not. Man, I guess if the soundtrack's not as important, you can do that.
I don't know. What company made? Oh, this was TriStar. This was Sony. That's right.
Okay, yeah.
So they got some money. I hope it did well. I'm going to look up the box office. You talk about something else. Hold on.
Well, it definitely profited. It made its money back in a nice little. It made like what was it, like a $60 million budget?
Okay.
I think is what I remember.
Let's see. Let me check the budget.
Or maybe it was lower.
Ooh,
it was
that's
$34
pretty
million.
good. That's good. That's good money. $34 million budget, which I'm surprised actually, considering the actors and the stunts,
exactly.
the stunts with
they
the
used a lot
cars.
of good stuff.
You know what probably happened? You know what I think happened? Sometimes a lot of these movies that take place in the real world, they'll run these campaigns among other companies, like car companies, when you're talking about a car film, and they'll willingly put your vehicle in the film to show its capabilities and to make it look awesome, and they'll pay for the production because you're utilizing. So it's almost like an auction, if you will. Like some of the vehicles you'll see in here, and I notice it's so obviously. No, seriously. Like we're talking like a big heavy truck, and they're almost advertising it, and you don't even know they are. Somebody in the audience is actually wanting to, compensate and look like a really big So they'll bring out this really big truck rather than the Porsche in that scene, and rather than the Volkswagen in that scene. And if you're going to advertise it, you're going to say, we need something heavy, sturdy, something that can take an impact and keep moving, right? They're advertising the vehicle and you don't even realize it. And that's where you can get a lot of your money coming in, and if you're having other sponsors here and there. So that happens.
That would still be part of the budget though, right? Because they'd factor that in though.
I don't know if
or is
it'd
that
be
extra?
I don't know. I don't know how they came down to their number, but I know one thing is that it's not then factored into their profit, because if the other companies are paying for the film, then the production company are like, good. We didn't have to put in any sort of money in there, and they're basically paying for the ad space. Either way, it says the budget was $34 million and the box office was $226 million, and that's really good, especially for a movie like this. That makes me so happy because I know what that means. And looking into the news here, it looks like they might be making a sequel, but it's not going to be called Baby Driver 2. It's going to have a different title. Oh, it looks like they might be making a sequel, Joseph. I don't know what
they say everything.
I don't know. I think it says here in this title that he has a script done or something like that. I don't know.
Can't believe everything. He's working on a different movie right now.
Maybe. But
I don't know. I think they need to leave movies alone if they're good.
Money.
Good point, though.
Money.
This is not a film based on any intellectual property. It's not a remake. It's not a sequel. It's just a movie that some dude made up, which is so rare, and yet it profited, which is it's interesting to me. And I think it just has to go down with the uniqueness of the premise and the music, because I had a friend at the time. At the time, I didn't even care about it. I was like, what is this movie? I don't know. I wasn't really a movie guy in 2017. But I had a friend who never watched movies. He doesn't like the Marvel films. He barely watches anything, and he was so pumped about this film. And I think that's why it succeeded. It was able to capture, like we said at the beginning, it was able to capture everyone's imagination, because everyone listens to music, And I think the music is the crux of this film and what makes it work so well.
Yeah. Compared to its predecessors, movies of similar concepts like The Town with Ben Affleck, that only made $154 million. Drive only made $81 million. Hot Fuzz only made $80 million. Now I understand what Hot Fuzz is, but the point is that to go over $200 million, that's pretty good considering its genre. Good. So and that's the thing. People like myself didn't even see the movie until afterwards. I just really wish we could get more original ideas like this, man, and with some good cinematography, original stories. That'd make me so happy. Make movies a lot more fun.
They're out there, man. They're just
They just don't come to Florida. And I go on YouTube and nobody sees it.
Yeah. Drive. It's funny. I was watching this stunt guys react thing, and they mentioned Drive, and they said because the action scenes in Drive, the chase scenes, are literally just him. You have to watch the film, but they're not exciting. Yeah. Because he drives with his lights on, and then he'll see a cop and he'll pull over and turn his lights off, and the cop drives by, right? And the guy was commenting, he's like, well, that's actually how you should do it if you're trying to escape. You don't just peel out in the middle of the road and start driving crazy. Right. Anyway.
Hey, I really love talking about the box office stuff because I'm really thinking about it. I'm that's actually very good knowing how production companies think, because spending $34 million on a movie to make 226, so just remove the 30. Let's just round it to 200 million. You made $200 million off of a movie. You invested something, waited 2 years, and you got $200 million back. The percentage, I cannot calculate in my head. I believe that's about 6 times the money being brought back in a 2 years time. And you got to think about the production that they're paying out and doing things when it comes to their next movie. But through this one movie, you could make 6 more of this movie from the profit of this movie. Right. And that's a big deal for those production companies. Things like Star Wars, they'll literally spend $500 million to make $1 billion. And that sounds nice and all. You ended up with more money in your pocket than this movie. But at what cost? You had to put in the investment of $500 million of assets that you're not going to have for 2 years to only get that same amount of money back in 2 years. Would it have been better spent in these other areas and making these kind of movies that over the long run you would have more quantities of movies, more, what are they called? Not franchises. I don't know maybe it is franchises. But you'd end up with more money in the pocket over more productions, and you'd have better competition in the market, especially when you're dealing with people like Disney.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's investors are stupid, man. Like, I just did my 45-hour post licensing class for real estate, and we were talking about investing in real estate.
Yeah.
And my teacher used an example of he is a trustee for an investment company, and same type of situation, metaphorical, if you will.
Yeah.
But there was a property that was like bought for like $40,000, and it was really nasty. It was in a very bad area, and the investor's like, we don't really feel like investing in this. And he's like, no. This is where you should go. I know it looks bad, but it's a low entry level, and we can do a lot with it.
Yeah.
So they invested like something like $1,000 in it, and they did a little work on it. They flipped it for like $140,000, and they made like almost 700% of their investment. They got like $7,000 back.
Right.
And then on the flip side, they wanted to invest in like a really nice like $300,000 house in a great neighborhood. And they're like, this is awesome. We really want to invest this. We want to put like $100,000 in this house. And then my teacher's like, well, I don't know that you're going to get as much back from it. And they're like, no, we're doing it.
Yeah.
So they buy the house, and then there was like flooding problems in the neighborhood. There was a whole bunch of issues.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But suffice it to say, they put in $100,000, and I think they only made like $1,000 back in 3 years. Well, like $1,000 in addition to their original.
Right. No,
investment.
I know.
Like they got the $100,000
That's not
back.
good. That's very bad. That's
So,
very bad.
when it comes to filmmaking, it's almost the same problem, right? Like, for some reason, filmmakers are blinded by what they will consider big budget film, like Star Wars. And I mean, Star Wars will probably always make money,
Right.
but
Unless you're Han
they're
Solo.
ignoring smaller investments with what they think are small returns. But if you look at just the percentage of it, it's actually really big returns, you
Right.
know? And they're just
And
not
with less
considering
risk.
that. Exactly.
And a better quality movie, as sad as that sounds, but I know they don't care about that, but in the long run, when you actually think about it, there's a potentiality of making more profit if you were to make a higher quantities of these types of films than if you were to make one big film, and you'd actually be boosting the economy because you'd have more of a circulation of money in the distribution of those assets to the individuals working in the production. And instead of just putting $30 million to Harrison Ford and that being a movie in itself, it's just like, come on.
Well, yeah, and I think it's an unsustainable error on investors' part. It's because I think, especially if you look at our generation, and I could be wrong, but I think people in our age bracket tend to be more critical about movies and tend to watch them more as an experience and more as a self-reflection than as entertainment. Whereas a lot of people I talk to from earlier generations, they're not as interested in that. They just want the entertainment.
Right.
So I think at some point, people are going to start, if they're just pumping out sequels that suck, and, I think of Hellboy that came out last year and just did terribly because no one wanted to see it.
And I didn't see it. I know that.
I didn't either. So
I saw some
think,
previews and I just didn't like the way it looked. Frankly, that was the reason I didn't want to see it, is because it didn't look as ambitious as the original.
Well, yeah, because all they're doing is taking well-known properties, sticking a director in there that no one really cares about. Well, and literally the director is just there to organize things, and the studio's telling them what to do,
Right.
and hoping it'll make money because it's just a property everyone knows about, and that's just not the way.
Or there's an
art
actor.
works.
An actor.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Ender's Game. They made $125 million off that movie, which means they made $100 million less than Baby Driver, yet their budget was $110 million, meaning they only made $15 million. And there's always these secret expenses when it comes to these productions too. It's just so you put so much invested into a property like Ender's Game, 3 times the budget of something like Baby Driver, only to make $15 million back compared to $200 million back. And so, I don't know, maybe people just need to start caring again.
Well, there's something to be said too for inflated budgets. How much money do you really need to make a good movie? $30 million for Baby Driver. That's pretty good for, you said, for the actors and the stunts. And so when you do like these 100 to 200 million budgets,
Yeah.
you end up wasting money, essentially, and especially using CG exorbitantly to the point where it's like, I think a good example is I forgot Ex Machina. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Ex Machina.
Yeah, that. It was made for 15. Hold on, look up the budget. I saw a breakdown of it. That's why I bring it up. It's made for 15 million. It's an indie film, technically, an expensive indie film.
Yeah.
And it's about a robot, right? You would think it'd be like really expensive with all the CG, but they talked about how they saved money by just doing smart things. And we talked about this with like TikTok and what's the other one that died? The Vine, right?
Yeah.
What made the Vine better than TikTok was the limitation on time, because creativity was allowed to flourish when you had a boundary.
Right.
And I think when you have films with just less money, you have to be more creative. Robert Rodriguez talks about that with his earlier films. So.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard that concept was when I was watching an interview of a man who works on the Nintendo Music in America. And he helped design the American songs for Mario back in the NES days, when he only had the limitations of, I don't know what you'd call it, like 8 bits you had to work with, so you can only have certain sounds like right, you only had like 15 notes to work with. He only have this much memory. So for him, he had to be creative with how it is that he assembles songs, knowing that he only has these limitations. He doesn't have every instrument, all that. What he said was that in those scenarios in which he had those limitations, that's when his creative mind was most capable of making something unique and good. When he was now in modern day, they give him anything he wants, literally anything he wants. Millions and millions of dollars of assets. You can make any song now digitally, and he's less creatively capable because there's no boundaries, and he doesn't know what too far is or too little or any of that. He's just doing things. And I understand that as myself, because I'm developing a film right now and I have a budget. But as funny as it seems, I'm trying to figure out the cheats, if you will, to make it look as high quality as regular films. And it ends up being quite a simple process, even if it's a long process of doing so. You don't actually need this much money. The money oftentimes just comes down to people wanting it to be fast, or people wanting it to be easy, rather than as if it's required. You look at something like, and sometimes it's a niche, but movies like, and this is an anomaly, God's Not Dead, its budget was $2 million. But because of the time in which the movie is being released and its marketing campaign, it made $64 million, making it made $62 million profit from a $2 million movie. That's really good considering its genre. And I'm like, wow, so in the same way, I can't even think of the percentage. That's a 32 times gain. 3,200% or something like that.
I don't know. Too much math.
Either way, that's all I have to say about that. Baby Driver did a good job financially. Hey, is there any sort of ideas that you wanted to hit on before we give this movie a rating?
I think we touched on everything. I think it hinges on the soundtrack being used effectively. I guess we didn't really talk about the tequila scene, but I think that's one of the best examples if you watch the film, where literally the gunshots are in sync to the music and it's just beautifully done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that there's much else to say on that. The acting, just to kind of give a wrapped outline, the acting we touched on was really strong. The music helped fuel the emotions, and the plot, while having a little bit of inconsistencies at times, was still enough to capture our imaginations and make us sad and make us happy and make us come back.
Right.
All right, so what would you rate it at?
I'd give it 95%.
95?
95. Very good movie.
Okay. I think I'm going to give it a 90.
I know I may have put it really high up there, but this is the reason why. Let me explain. Oh, okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just quickly, the reason why is that I can genuinely appreciate a uniqueness, individuality, and the effort that was put into this film to be good in and of itself, knowing that it's not the same as all these other franchises, to give people a good time, make you feel, even if that feeling is uncomfortable and sometimes dread outside of it. It's a movie that I'm going to be talking about the rest of my life. And it's a movie that I'm going to be showing others for the rest of my life. And that does not happen often. I am not compelled to show Avengers Endgame to my peers at the same level as Baby Driver. And it's not because Endgame is a bad movie, but it's because Baby Driver is uniquely good in and of itself. So that's why I put it at 95, because it's just so great.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think you rated it too high. I think I'm going to give it a 97.
Ooh, okay, good. I thought I was...
You went too low.
I thought you were saying that's a little high, Brandon.
No. I do think it has flaws, which makes it not 100. But I think there is no other movie that I have watched that has so tapped into my emotions and so just captivated me. I think it did a really good job of that. So.
Yeah, man.
97.
Yeah, it's a good movie. That evens out to exactly 96.5. And no, it doesn't. It's just 96. Sorry, everybody.
That makes sense.
All right.
Cool. Well, so his next film, just kind of as a prelude, is called Last Night in Soho. Who knows when it's coming out?
Yeah.
Because of everything.
Right.
But it's actually a psychological horror film, interestingly enough.
He'll be good at that, I think.
I think
he did a great job with this.
Yeah, he's good at shots, and horror is hinges a lot on shots. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, cool. Well, guys, if you like this, feel free to subscribe. Actually, just subscribe. That's a command, not an option.
That is a command. You don't have a choice. If you didn't like this, subscribe.
Yes. What Brandon said. Subscribe to our channel. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Leave a comment. Tell us if you've seen Baby Driver, if you liked it, why you liked it. If you didn't like it, why you didn't like it. And what movies you'd like to see us watch next or hear us talk about next. And then also, if you're watching on like a different platform and there is a like option or a comment option, feel free to indulge in that. All right. Any last
Absolutely. Baby Driver, good.
There you go. You heard it from Brandon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching the Spoiled Onions review podcast. Tune in next week when we release yet another.
Nice and vague. All right, bye.
Bye.